Good evening and welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, PDP rains verbal attacks on the president, accuses him of waging a one-sided war on corruption. Presidency fires back, dismisses allegations as untrue. More ministers to be screened by the Senate on Tuesday. Former Rivers State Governor Chibuike Amechi and Adebayo Shitu to join second batch of ministers. And massive typhoon hits the Philippines. We begin tonight with a throw of accusations by the People's Democratic Party on the Buhari-led administration of it being guilty of its selective anti-corruption war and the campaign targeting the PDP's party followers. During a press conference at the national headquarters in Abuja, the party's national publicity secretary accused the federal government of harassing and hounding its members. Chief Olisametu described the president's approach as tyrannical and despotic, aimed at cowing PDP leaders into joining the All Progressives Congress. He said while former PDP governors and ministers were being arrested and questioned on corruption charges, their APC counterparts were being rewarded with ministerial nominees.
It is clearly manifest that the same dictatorial tendencies manifested during the military regime of 1984 is being presently applied in the polity in the attempt to discredit PDP members and weaken our great party ahead of 2019. The APC and its government have been busy denigrating the PDP and trying to appropriate our achievements, while at the same time blackmailing, hounding, and harassing our elected members with the aim to cow and force them to leave the PDP and join their party. This clearly explains why the so-called fight against corruption has been selective and focused against PDP members, despite counsels by stakeholders that it should be holistic and in accordance with the due process of the law. The best example of the curious nature of the war against corruption is the fact that former PDP governors and ministers are being hounded and arrested over apparently orchestrated petitions, while their APC counterparts, who have more damaging petitions, are being nominated for ministerial positions. Even other APC former governors who have ongoing corruption cases in court are being rewarded with APC tickets for the forthcoming governorship elections in Kogi and Bayelsa State.
Meanwhile, the presidency has reacted swiftly to the allegations made by the People's Democratic Party on the allegation of witch hunting its members. The president's advisor on media, Mr. Femi Adesina, says ordinarily he would not want to comment on such allegations because as comments coming from a political party, responses need to come from the APC leadership. But concerning the president, he said that it is unfair for Mr. Olisametu to claim that the president's anti-corruption war is one-sided. According to Mr. Adesina, Mr. Metu is sounding like a broken record. It is the same thing that he says all the time. But let me assure Nigerians that the president has always maintained that even where it affects APC members, the persons concerned must go and defend themselves. He says the issue now is not whether the people facing the EFCC actually committed the crime, but Mr. Metu is saying that it is one-sided. He also adds, I think what is of interest to Nigerians is, did these people commit the crime? We turn to other issues now. The embattled former governor of Akwa Ibom State, Godswill Akpabio, is off the hook, albeit temporarily, as the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission released him after long interrogation at its office in Abuja. The former governor, who's also the Senate Minority Leader, is accused of allegedly mismanaging 108.1 billion naira while he was in office. His invitation by the EFCC followed a petition by an Abuja-based lawyer and activist, Leo Epeong. The lawyer had petitioned President Muhammadu Buhari and the EFCC, calling for Akpabio's probe accusing him of looting Akwa Ibom Treasury. The former governor, now senator, was elected in 2007 at a time the state enjoyed robust oil revenue. Barring any last-minute change of plans, the Senate is expected to conclude the screening of the second batch of ministerial nominees on Wednesday. The screening exercise will resume on Tuesday, which will have the former governor of Rivers State, Chibuike Amechi, take his turn alongside another nominee, Adebayo Shitu. The nomination of Mr. Amechi has generated a lot of controversy following petitions from a group in Rivers State accusing him of fraudulent practices during his tenure as governor of Rivers State. Latest reports from the Nigeria Police Force say that the police is still profiling the remaining nominees. 16 nominees are in the second list, read on the floor of the Senate by the Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki. Now, already 18 others in the first batch of nominees have been confirmed by the Senate. The Force Public Relations Officer, Mr. Olabisi Kolawole, says screening of the second batch of nominees has commenced, but is yet to be concluded. She, however, gave assurance that no ministerial nominee will be dropped by the police. Tuesday is just about 72 hours from now. The Senate will be resuming screening for the remaining ministerial nominees on the floor. It's also expected that the two carried over from the first batch, talking about Amechi and Shitu, may also be screened. But now there are some issues of litigation, especially on the candidacy of the former Rivers State governor. How will this determine his case before the Senate? And will the Senate be breaching any law if it decides to accept the petitions of alleged fraud against him? Joining me now on the News at 10 to examine all these, including the anti-corruption war, the president is the senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Dele Additional. You're welcome to the News at 10.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Well, glad to have you here. Before we begin to talk about the screening of the ministerial nominees, let's begin with the anti-corruption war that the president has begun in Nigeria. The PDP is accusing the president of a one-sided anti-corruption war. What do you think?
Well, speaking for myself, I would think it is too early to make judgmental pronunciations. I believe that, yes, the job of the opposition is to criticize. So PDP is not doing anything new. In fact, they are expected to be more vociferous than what we are seeing, because that itself has a way of putting the government on the spot to do that which is right, in point of time, in point of strategy, and in points of the decision making. But I think it is too early to conclude that the anti-corruption is one-sided.
So there is
too early.
There is no basis there to say the government should have done things differently.
I believe it's too early. When we see the trend, when people after these initial invitations, people that are found to have committed one infraction or the other, when they are charged to court and a holistic review is done, maybe after some solid 9 months to 1 year, and you find out that consistently they belong to one block. And as long as you find 1 or 2 or 3 people who, in your own best of judgment, ought to have been invited and questioned and charged, and rather than that happening, they're not up there, you can make up this kind of story. However, the government must also try as much as possible to guide against the cultivation of wrong perception in the way they execute the agenda.
Okay, well, let's go back to the screening exercise now. The Senate promised before the exercise started that they will be thorough with this exercise. Do you think they've been as thorough as they promised?
Again, it will not be surprising to me that people have different reports.
But what do you think?
You know, for me, I've seen a very serious-minded screening. I've had some questions that are very pivotal. I've had answers that were very direct to the points. But in a situation like this, people see what they want to see. It is true that some people may have seen nominees and senators backslapping each other, you know, exchanging pleasantries and backslapping. But when you see some of the questions that proceeded from some of the senators to some of the nominees, you will know that a good number of the nominees are like round pegs in round holes, having regard to the way they demonstrated confidence in answering the questions. If I don't know whether I can specifically mention a couple of names or the nominees that I actually watched, and I believe I was satisfied. The lady from Ogun State, which by my own subjective assessment is the best I have seen in the crowd. A particular senator asked about 5 solid questions from her, all bordering on trade, investment, and finance. And I didn't find her answer wanting in a single one of them. The gentleman that was also questioned on Alhaji Abubakar Malami, senior advocate of Nigeria, direct questions were pointed at him on justice administration, on criminal justice system, on delay in our justice system. And I believe he answered those questions too, directly.
It seems like you've already picked your candidates. If you were in a position of authority to do so, you have already picked your candidates.
If I have, but unfortunately, I do not have the right to do that. But you see, I've always held the view that a better screening will be done if a nominee that is standing before the Senate is there with a full knowledge of what portfolio is being screened for, so that the job of the senators is now to determine the suitability, the ability, the capacity of that person facing them for that particular office. You know, I still do not know why we do not fix portfolios with the names.
Okay. One of the nominees will be interviewed, will be screened this week, which is the former River State governor. He already has a petition hanging over his head. Will it still be legitimate for the Senate to go ahead with the screening, even though this petition is still pending?
Yes, it is the duty of the senators to investigate the petitions. Whether they are 1 or 100, they must be investigated. I believe allegation does not amount to proof. When those allegations are investigated, if they are found to be proven, and in their best of judgment, they have reasons for why they should not confirm, they will have parameters, they will have the basis. But what is happening regarding the former governor of River State is really a case study, you know, that will put everybody in the know that whatever you do today can either stand for you tomorrow or stand against you tomorrow.
And I guess
it is all a process of accountability, you know. And I think the former governor of Lagos State too had that kind of challenge, and he stood very squarely to it, you know. I believe the senators were able to make up their mind that this gentleman standing before us, you know, knows what he's doing. But it is very good for us to see this happening from time to time, so that people will stop taking the people for granted.
And I think we'll have to wait until the Senate screening of the former River State governor to see how well the senators do with the screening and with the petition hanging over his head. Thank you so much, Mr. Dele Adesina, for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you so much.
I've been speaking with the Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Dele Adesina, on the anti-corruption campaign by the President, as well as the ministerial screening, which continues this week. In part 2, after the break, Kano Monarch, the Governor, and the Commissioner of Police battle cattle rustlers in the territory. That's in a moment. Please stay with us.